Hey, welcome to the first of the Mark Steyn Show's interviews with leadership candidates for the Canadian Conservative Party race. There are a bazillion candidates, and it's unlikely that the show will actually run that long to interview all of them. So I've picked out the ones that are a special interest to me, and it's great to be starting with Dr. Kellie Leitch. Dr. Leitch, that's, by the way, not doctor in the sense of a PhD in gender studies or anything. Dr. Leitch is an actual pediatric surgeon, so she's a real doctor. And I wanted to start. You served in the latter part of Mr. Harper's ministry and cabinet. You were Minister of Labour and Minister for the Status of Women. The trick when you've got like a 15-man race is to carve out a little bit of space for yourself, and you've done that essentially running a campaign that people have said occupies the same space as what happened with Trump south of the border, what happened with Brexit in the UK. Is that a fair assessment of your position on the spectrum?
Well, if you're saying that I am talking about common sense ideas that the average Canadian cares about, absolutely. You know, I've spent my time since entering this race talking to Canadians across the country, and they talk about things that are important to them, things they talk about at their family dinner tables. And some of those are issues that other politicians don't want to tackle, but I'm quite happy to talk about them.
There is a theory you hear, particularly from Canadian Liberal Party members, that what happened in the United States, what happened in the United Kingdom, what happened what's happening in continental Europe, that Canada's an exception to the rest of the Western world, that a kind of populist movement against the wisdom of the elites. That's not going to fly here.
Well, I completely disagree. You know, we have a prime minister here who a few weeks ago said that myself and the people that support me are part of the fringe. Well, I would say that Justin Trudeau and the elites in this country, they're the fringe. Average Canadians have things that they really care about. I've been talking a lot about immigration policy here in Canada, and 2/3 of Canadians agree with me. Last I checked, that's the majority, not the fringe.
Yeah, it's true. It's actually strange in our politics today that by fringe ideas, they mean ideas that command the support of 2/3 of the electorate.
Their ideas are that if it's not their idea, it's not actually an idea of the majority of Canadians. Well, I completely disagree. I've been talking to Canadians across the country. The safety and security of our country, what our country becomes in the future, the makeup of Canada is extremely important to Canadians. And our current Liberal government doesn't seem to get it. They're quite out of touch.
Justin Trudeau gave an interesting soundbite to the New York Times a couple of months back. He said, saying that you're the fringe, for example, implies that the opposite of the fringe is the mainstream. There's mainstream, and then there's wacky people out on the fringe. And yet, Mr. Trudeau, at the same time as he says you're the fringe, he told the New York Times there is no mainstream in Canada, there is no core identity. What do you make of that?
Well, I would say that he's out of touch. Canadians are very proud. We have a unique shared Canadian identity grounded in a shared set of values. Hard work, generosity, freedom, tolerance, equality of opportunity. Those shared values are what built Canada. They're also the shared values that individuals from around the world aspire to become a part of and decide to immigrate to Canada for. And so I don't know why Justin Trudeau would say that, except to say he really is out of touch, and also tends to contradict himself.
Well, that's true. I get the impression he actually genuinely believes that, in a way, that Canada is like, gate 27 at Pearson Airport. It just is whoever happens to be standing in it. And he's serious when he says there's no kind of enduring identity that's passed on through the generations, as it were.
Yeah. He has a very globalist agenda, and he does not believe that we as Canadians share something. Well, I can tell you, having talked to people across the country for months now,
Right.
Canadians are proud to be Canadian, and they know why they're Canadian.
Right.
They have an identity, they know what those shared values are. And it doesn't matter if your family came here in the 1800s like mine, or they came 2 weeks ago. They know what they want to become a part of. And I guess what I say to Justin Trudeau is, if you don't think there's any core identity here, what are you integrating people into to build a Canada for the future?
Yeah.
For me, I know what that is, and I know what kind of country we want to have. I want to have, Canadians want to have in the future.
Yeah, you can't. You have to have something to assimilate with. I'd like to explore that a little in relation to your own background. Your father was in construction, and he built a large part of Fort McMurray as it boomed in the early days of the oil boom. What do you? That's a very different background from Mr. Trudeau's, for example. What did you learn from watching your parents growing up, and from the construction industry and Fort McMurray and all that?
What I've learned, and I think it's what all young Canadians learn, is that if you go out and work hard in this country, you can get ahead. If you go out and work hard, your family prospers, as my father's company did, as our family did. But then you actually have to give back generously. You know, and in Fort McMurray, when you live 500 kilometers north of the closest other city in Edmonton, you actually have to invest in your own community. You're on your own. And that's what I learned every single day, watching our family company grow and watching the people of Fort McMurray build their town. Fundamentally different than the lifestyle Justin Trudeau's grown up in. But I think I'm more representative of the average Canadian, and particularly the average person who decides to immigrate to Canada, the new Canadians that come here and work hard every day to help build this country.
Is there something different, though, about construction? It's interesting to me that Donald Trump worked in the construction industry, and it's kind of the one thing you can't outsource. In the end, if you're building something with bricks and mortar, you have to actually be doing it in Fort McMurray. You can't build the edifice in China and put it on a container and stick it, in New York or Fort McMurray or wherever else it is. It's kind of, in today's market where everything is kind of outsourced to cheap third world labor, it's kind of an exception, isn't it, the construction industry?
Well, I will say that there are some times that people prefabricate buildings and ship them, but the fact of the matter is the majority of the time it's about making sure people are on the site working hard and they're motivated to get the job done, and then they have a great deal of satisfaction when they actually see what the product is. You know, my father, brother, and sister are all still in construction. I'm in construction, it's just in a different place. It's human construction in an operating room.
Yeah.
My brother likes to tease me about how I have the same equipment, it's just in a different place, and it's a lot more expensive.
No, that's true. You are a surgeon, and you're an I always find orthopedic pediatric a kind of mouthful to say, because they're both from that same root of PD as in children. Yeah, so it's orthopedics applies to grown-ups now, but as I understand it, originally developed with children. It's said that it's because that's what you do, that's why you're pro-life. Is that correct?
Well, for me, my practice prior to getting elected, a significant number of my patients, almost 50% of them, were children with severe disabilities.
Right.
You know, I come from a Roman Catholic faith, but as well as I say, many of these children may not have had a great chance. And I think that as a physician, life is something that is sacred. And I do everything I can each day that I'm practicing to make sure kids have more productive and happy lives. And many of my colleagues also are on the cutting edge of making sure that they actually get to live.
When Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, well, going back to when he became party leader, he basically took the view that he wanted the social issues like off the table, that Canadians had somehow agreed not to talk of them, and they just wanted that taken off the table, and they didn't want to know about it. Is that still the case, do you think?
What I find talking to people across the country, the things that come up the most are obviously the economy here. We have a Liberal government that's taken us down a path of, huge deficits and debt.
Right.
I do hear a significant amount about our Canadian values and what kind of country we're going to build for the future. I don't hear as much about social issues, except in certain areas, but I'm happy to engage on them. We live in a free, open democracy here in Canada, and individuals should be allowed to speak about the things they care about and be able to, and not be bullied into a corner that they're not allowed to talk about those things. I want individuals across the country, no matter what the issue is, to feel that they live in a free, open democracy, a tolerant society, that they can talk about the things they care about.
Mr. Harper was very much of an incrementalist, and he was successful
he was very successful
at that. And it wasn't that he said it wasn't so much that he said you couldn't talk about it, but he just felt there were things it was not useful to talk about. When you entered this race, you seemed to decide you wanted to move the needle in a big way, and that you wanted to be something a little more than an incrementalist. Is that correct?
Well, when you're a surgeon, you're usually a little bold.
Right.
And you are happy to tackle big issues. And as I say to several people, and it frequently comes up, is that, there are certain things that people have not felt they could comfortably talk about.
Right.
I'm happy to talk about those things. We live in a free, open democracy. And I don't want individuals who are on the right of center to feel that they're bullied into not talking about the things they care about. When we're as conservatives, we win, we do well when we are not afraid. And I want every conservative out there to know that they have a strong voice, and one that the country needs. And if it means tackling some of the elephants in the room, talking about things that the liberal elites on the left don't want to talk about, I'm delighted to talk about them.
Well, let's talk about some of those. And for example, it's widely assumed that things like the niqab cost the Tories the last election. I don't get that sense when you talk. You can talk to a wide range of Canadians of all stripes. You can talk to Quebec secessionists who support the Parti Québécois, who nevertheless think there's something strange about the idea of being able to be completely covered from head to toe when you take your oath of allegiance. As I said, these are Quebec secessionists, so they don't even believe in the oath of allegiance, but they think it actually is kind of weird to see somebody covered from head to toe. Why is it that the Canadian establishment wants to kind of shut down that conversation?
I'm not sure why they want to shut it down, except what I will say is that, when you're an elitist, you think that your view is more important than others. And I agree with you. I don't think that, I think that individuals should reveal their face when they take our oath of allegiance, when their identity needs to be verified. And you're right, Canadians across the country did not view that as a single issue that changed the election. I find it interesting, one of the issues that I've been talking a significant amount about is immigration policy.
Right.
And I find that when the left isn't winning the argument, they just sort of immediately go to slander.
Right.
Well, I think this is a thoughtful conversation we should be having. This is a serious issue. Countries around the globe are tackling this issue, dealing with it head on. And we have a government here that has their head in the sand, as well as some candidates in my own conservative race who don't want to talk about this very serious issue that will have an impact on Canada.
No, the interesting thing, you said people, the minute you raise this, people just say you're a racist. The phrase they used with you, I think it was in Maclean's headline by an old National Post colleague of mine, who said that you'd kind of single-handedly ignited a culture war. And I don't know whether that's the case. I mean, if you look at it from the other perspective, the question is surely why there are all these various parties in Parliament, yet actually very few of them, very few members of any of these parties are talking about these issues.
Yeah, it's hard to say that 2/3 of Canadians are racists. You know, this is a very common sense policy. All that I'm talking about is actually talking to each immigrant, refugee, and visitor to Canada with face-to-face interviews by trained immigration officers. It's in line with what the Senate Standing Committee has recommended. This is something that was recommended years ago, and the Liberal government has actually not implemented. I find it strikingly odd that something so important to the country is not being discussed.
Yeah, because as I understand it, it's actually only 1 in 5 immigrants that actually gets a face-to-face interview.
About 1 in 10.
1 in 10. Oh,
that means
right,
last year about 270,000 people entered Canada without actually meeting a Canadian.
Right.
You know, this is a win-win scenario.
Right.
When you're an immigrant and you meet someone, you can actually integrate better, and it allows us as Canadians to actually assess the people coming into the country. I think this is very common sense, and this is a little bit back to the future.
Right.
This is something our government did all the way up to the 2000s, and only after that did we start to dwindle this down. So I find it interesting that people are so angst-ridden about this, but as I say, 2/3 of Canadians agree with me on it, so I'm pretty comfortable with it.
No, and it. I wondered in the broader sense, you said that, you know, that people aren't concerned about social issues. With Trump down south, it was said that in effect, what you might call cultural issues became the new social issues, that at a certain point in American politics, social issues were abortion and gay marriage, and that in the last few years, in fact, that's been replaced by things like the wall that Mexico's going to pay for, and the so-called Muslim ban and everything. That and again, I think you could say the same with the Brexit vote. You could look at similar things happening in Europe. That it's social issues aren't so much about abortion and gay marriage and whatnot anymore, but they're about just a kind of unease that the landscape is changing too fast and people aren't sure what it's going to look like in 10 years' time.
Well, I think that there are issues that are about the social fabric of a country that some individuals, in the case of our government here, the Liberals, are unwilling to deal with. You know, the Immigration Refugee Protection Act here in Canada is very clear. It's about nation building. And that nation building is not just economic, it's social and cultural. Well, why would we as Canadians then not engage in having a thoughtful conversation about what we're going to become in the future? And part of what we're about to become is contingent upon the people that we welcome into our Canadian family. You know, and so what I've been talking about is talking to them all and also making sure that they agree to our Canadian values so we can build the country we want in the future. Whether or not the Liberals agree with that, the majority of Canadians agree with it because they are very proud of their country and want it to actually be successful in the future.
Well, that phrase you use, Canadian values, you've been attacked for using that phrase and asking that people who come into the country should somehow demonstrate a commitment to it. I remember back when Monsieur Chrétien bestrode the scene like a colossus, 15 years ago. We're not going back that far. He used to talk about, the Canadian values in his marvelous accent all the time, and people loved it. And he claimed a kind of proprietorial hammerlock on the phrase. And when he used it, it was fine. Canadian values were Chrétien's values, were Liberal Party values. You use the phrase and suddenly it's controversial.
Well, as I say, when the Liberals are not winning the war, they immediately go to slander. And what I want Conservatives to know is that the values that this country was built on are the values that are Canadian values that we as Conservatives were a big part of.
Right.
And I want Conservatives to be proud of that and to be tough, to go out and feel that they own these values just like every other Canadian. And as I say, we have this tendency here in Canada as Conservatives to, when someone bullies us, to sort of back down and to take a back seat, not to step up. I want conservatives in this country to step forward, to say what they believe in, and make sure that they're part of the dialogue. And if that means I take a few bows and arrows to at the beginning of the conversation, that's okay. I just want conservatives in this country to know that they're going to have a strong voice in myself in the leadership, but they actually have a voice themselves.
People say that this, in a certain sense, this is dog whistle politics. That that everyone understands that what this really means is. Trump stands up and says he wants a Muslim ban till we can figure out what the hell is going on, in his words, and that you've just found a kind of artful way of of tap dancing around it. When you see things like this, whatever it is, the resolution M103, the Islamophobia resolution, I wanted to ask you two questions, and the first is whether, because Islamophobia isn't defined in this resolution. It's, as an old friend once said to me, it's a disease of which the only symptom is that you get accused of having it. And it's, no one makes any attempt to define it in the Parliament of Canada. For me personally, I fought a long campaign to get Section 13 in the hate speech code changed, and eventually that was repealed. And because I feel it's dangerous actually to keep restricting the conversation here. How do you feel on this resolution, and how do you feel about this Islamophobe finger pointing more generally?
Well, I will be voting against M103. I don't think that there is any place for the state in houses of worship. And no religion should receive any special privileges. We live in an open democracy, as you have been saying, and that open democracy means that we can criticize religions. In this country, my faith, individuals of Roman Catholic faith, have been criticized, and we have been told that this is acceptable behavior. We live in an open democracy. We can have these tolerant conversations. And now all of a sudden, we're not allowed to have them on certain faiths. Well, I disagree. We cherish that freedom of speech in this country. That's one of those values we talk about, and all of a sudden the Liberals want to shut it down. Well, I say no, and I'm glad that so many people are stepping forward from all walks of life in this nation to say that they oppose this motion.
You say you were raised a Catholic. The Catholic Church is insulted routinely. There's so-called edgy comics, all in third-rate Toronto open mic nights, will stand up any day of the week and do 20 minutes on how all Catholic priests are pedophiles and everything, and nobody bats an eyelid because Catholics are just meant to kind of suck it up and take it. And there's something bizarre in the idea of the Parliament of Canada coming together to erect a kind of protective barrier around one particular religion.
Well, as I say, I don't think any religion deserves special privileges, and that's why I will be voting against this motion. And the state and church in this world, the state and houses of worship in our country here in Canada, are separate entities. Individuals, part of the Canadian way, part of those Canadian values I've been talking about is that men and women are equal. But you can worship whoever you want or no one in this country. And we're tolerant of that. We may have our own opinions on it, but as long as we're not hurting each other, then criticism is completely allowed. And that's what I think makes us a strong democracy. I want that to be maintained, and a big part of that, as I say, is freedom of speech.
You used a great phrase a couple of months back that was terrific. You talked about the revenge of the comment, revenge of the comment section, which for old print hacks like me, it took me a couple of years to get used to the idea that and you see it all over this country. If you go to the Toronto Star website, the CBC website, Globe and Mail, Maclean's, there'll be a piece written within the bounds of polite Canadian discourse, and then in the comment section, everybody will
pile on.
Pile on. So what do you mean by that marvelous phrase?
Well, a big part of it is exactly what we're talking about with M103 and being opposed to it. That we have freedom of speech in this country, and you may read the regular article, to your point, that may be all pretty and nice. Yeah. But Canadians really get to have their say when they go into the comments section and they submit themselves. And that's where I have seen, and I see it every day when people write into my office, that average Canadians agree with the common sense policies I'm putting forward. Lots of people say to me, well, you're getting bashed by the media, you're getting hit hard by these elites. That's fine with me, because I feel particularly comfortable that literally hundreds of thousands of Canadians are supporting what I'm doing. And part of that is writing into the comment section.
What do you mean by this phrase elites? Because in a way it's just a great story when it was marvelous with the Brexit vote when all major parties, the BBC, everybody was entirely confident that all sane people supported the United Kingdom's membership of the European Union. And at 5:02 in the morning or whatever it was, when it tipped into the 51%, and they realised that all these kind of smelly, unwashed nobodies out there in the hinterlands had kind of refused to take their word for it. That's a kind of great moment. Similarly, at whatever it was at 9:31 on election night south of the border, when Florida went to Trump, and they realized that Hillary Clinton, having the support of all major newspapers and Jay-Z and Beyonce and all the rest of them, hadn't been enough. What do you understand by the phrase the elites? Because you're a highly skilled surgeon, and to most people that's an I couldn't do what you do. That's a highly skilled elite profession. What do you mean by that phrase?
When I talk about elites, I'm talking about individuals who think they know better than you and me, that they think their ideas are more important and they're happy to foist them upon you. I have a great education. I work very hard for it. But someone who's a successful businessman or businesswoman because they built their company from the ground up, people may say they're elite, but they worked hard for it. They're not foisting their viewpoint on others. They just worked hard to achieve what they have. I have a great education. People would say I have an elite education, but I don't think I'm an elitist. I'm someone who, just like the majority of Canadians, have gone out and either worked part-time jobs or had to make sure I had great full-time jobs during the summer to afford my education, and then I worked hard so that I would achieve it. And I think that's what the majority of Canadians do. We don't foist our ideas upon others. We're open-minded and we listen, and then we work together to build a great Canada. But there's certain people that think their views are more important than others.
What's the difference between politics and how you've lived your life? Mr. Harper, for example, who he was a philosophical guy. He was a kind of ideologue before he actually took the leadership of the Canadian Alliance Party, as it was then. But he wasn't someone who had expertise in particular kinds of business. You're up against some candidates who've been in elective politics all their life, or they've been bureaucrats and then transitioned into elective politics.
Right.
You came to it. You actually got into the water comparatively late, even though, as I understand it, you've been a committed conservative since you were in grade 6 or something. So why did you leave it so long, as it were, to get into the pool, and is there a difference between being in the real world in what you're doing when you're in the operating room, and then this kind of the way politics operates?
Well, I think, as one of my mentors said, public service is good for you. And for myself, whether it be my medical profession or as a parliamentarian, Public service is what I view this as. And I have a responsibility then to actually make sure that the average Canadian can have their voice heard. And the one great thing is that Prime Minister Harper allowed me to continue practicing medicine as a volunteer, and that allows me to daily, well, I did daily, I've taken a leave of absence in the last 2 weeks, allow me to actually stay grounded, to know what the average guy and gal cares about and what their kids need. You know, it's interesting, people ask me all the time why a surgeon would run. I ran because Jim Flaherty asked me to. It was a bit of happenstance. Helena Georgis was a sitting member of Parliament. She was removed from Cabinet and caucus, and a seat that is voted Conservative since almost Confederation every time came available, and it was a great opportunity for me, and I'm glad he encouraged me to do so.
You were called a star candidate back then when you first stood for the nomination there, and you had like a lot of, in Ontario Tory terms, you had a lot of stellar support, including Bill Davis, who was the great giant of Ontario politics when I was a boy. And were you then shocked at the way in political life you can say something like your Canadian values thing, and suddenly everyone turns on you, you're racist, you're beyond the pale, you're way off in that. I mean, it's a strange, it's unlike any other kind of profession, this idea that you're expected to like tiptoe around on eggshells, and one infelicitous soundbite can consign you to the garbage can of history if you're not careful. I mean, it's like there's no other industry that is like that in that sense. And I wondered in the half decade or whatever before Bill Davis and the other Ontario big shots were hailing you as the face of the new Tory party, and when people are saying, "Well, that's you can't say that," that's a short period of time in which to learn how it can all turn on you in this, isn't it?
Well, you know, both as a surgeon, meeting patients in the emergency department and then on the OR table, and also in politics as a parliamentarian, I think that if you have ideas and you feel strongly about them, you need to be principled and back them up. And I know that Mr. Davis and others know that about me.
Right.
And some people characterize it in a positive way, and some people say that I'm just a little too aggressive. But what I will tell you is that I won't change my mind. People will know what they get if they're voting for Kellie Leitch. They will know that they're getting a principled Conservative that will implement the things that they've asked me to implement. And that's how I plan to conduct myself as leader of the party when I win in May of this year, and that's how I'll conduct myself as Prime Minister of this country.
Let me ask you that final question then about being Prime Minister of Canada. Can Justin Trudeau, the slobbering love affair that the media at home and abroad has with him, Marvel Comics put him on the cover of a comic book last year as if he's some kind of superhero. Can you clobber that superhero in a Canadian election?
Absolutely. I'm 100% confident of it. And it's, as I said at the beginning, as Conservatives, we are successful when we're not afraid. When we're not afraid to talk about the things we care about and we articulate them in a clear manner. So whether that be immigration policy, whether that be the safety and security of this nation, whether it be the economic prosperity of this country, I know that we will beat him hands down. And I'm looking forward to that moment, and then actually getting the country back on track, making sure that Canadians can be prosperous and making sure that they're safe and secure here at home. But I'm 100% confident that we can beat him in 2019, as long as we stay focused on Conservative values that have Conservative ideas at the front, and we're not afraid to articulate them clearly.
That's Barry Goldwater, a choice, not an echo. That's opening up clear blue water between you and the Liberal Party.
There are a lot of differences between Justin Trudeau and I, let alone that I'm a woman.
Right.
He claims he's a feminist. But let's be very clear. I think Conservatives do the best when they are and act like Conservatives, not like some of the Liberal lights who are in my leadership race with me.
No, that's true. Well, keep opening up that clear blue water.
I'm looking forward to building a strong movement so that we deal with Justin Trudeau in an effective manner by beating him in 2019.
Okay, that's great. Kellie Leitch, thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Excellent.